table A over there, and I know that John and Hope touched on this a little bit, but did you sign on to the referendum to undo the 8 Washington project? Yes or no? And as supervisor, would you actively support or oppose this measure when it appears on the ballot in 2013? What steps will you take to ensure that housing remains affordable to low-income residents of the city, many of whom constitute the membership of this club? Great.
Hi, Julian Davis again. Not only did I sign on, but we were the only campaign in District 5 to take the time, resources, and energy away from collecting just signatures in order to qualify us for the ballot and to actually collect signatures to qualify the 8 Washington referendum for the ballot. We collected 300 plus signatures to put that on the ballot. And as supervisor next year, I will campaign to tear down that seawall on the waterfront before it ever gets built. What can we do around affordable housing in San Francisco? We've got an affordable housing trust fund on the ballot right now. I'm for it. I don't think it goes far enough. I think setting up a dedicated permanent funding source for affordable housing is absolutely critical, but if you look at the amount that's going in there, at Booker T, for instance, we're going to be spending $25 million of our $35 million rebuild is on 50 units of housing. So when you look at what $25 million can do, it's a few dozen units. We need to be looking the way Chicago did in the 1990s at how we can invest upwards of $1 billion in affordable housing over the short term. I want to go back to the ballot with an affordable housing bond to create LGBT senior housing, housing for emancipated foster youth, housing for low-income and middle-income people in San Francisco. I think we need to talk to our state legislators about changing the 2/3 threshold for passing an affordable housing bond here on the local level to at most a 55% threshold, and I will take the leadership to get that done.
Question. Could you not hold the mic quite so close to your mouths? I'm hard of hearing, but I keep getting an echo. If you could just hold it a little bit away from your mouths, I would appreciate it. Okay.
Daniel Everett again, everyone. You know, out there campaigning, I've certainly had my ear to the ground as far as what's going on with ordinary residents. And that being said, there's a whole sentiment out there that essentially says that City Hall has a policy where if you can't afford to live here, they say, hey, no problem. That's why we invented the East Bay. You take your broke butt, you move over there. And they're implementing that policy with the rents, with the waterfront project, and with the essential nickel and diming of everyday residents here in San Francisco. So yes, I would be very much in favor of implementing affordable housing policies in San Francisco. Not only that, folks, but I am the product of that. I grew up in housing, in government housing. I spent my whole life in government housing. I understand the importance of having that rich history stay here in San Francisco. The fact of the matter is, and I learned this especially working on the Race and Property Law Journal at Hastings where I was a board member, a good deal of the African American families in District 5, in San Francisco as a whole, are hanging on by threads. And the only place they're hanging on is in the government housing units. That is an absolute travesty. We need to implement policies that facilitate low-income and public housing and low-income housing. So I can make this into a rap.
I actually want you to give me 2 sentences expanding on, well, or defining, you said 2 things that I don't really know what that means. What is an ordinary resident or an everyday citizen?
Well, certainly, let's be honest, everybody here in San Francisco is extraordinary. I've never been to a more vibrant city in my life. But an ordinary resident is just somebody who's just trying to get by. May not have the best job in the world, but certainly are a bedrock of this city in that they represent the culture, the heritage, the vibrancy, and the character of the city. And I think those are the ordinary residents to me, in that they're not special. They're not so special that they could afford to live at the waterfront. They're not so special so that they could essentially influence their legislator. They're not so special that they could live apart from the rest of us.
Okay, I just was curious about that.
I think if you added some commas, that would come out to 2 sentences.
Wave your hand at me if I have it too close, and I'll move the microphone away. I'm Hope Johnson. I oppose 8 Washington. I still oppose 8 Washington. I signed the measure. I was disappointed that the city made the people who collected the signatures carry around the great big EIR. It cost them a lot of money to copy that. That's one of the ways that they try to make it difficult for us to oppose those kinds of measures. I think it's the privatization of a public space. You wouldn't be able to see along the waterfront. It sets a poor precedent for, for other height limits on there. I oppose that when the neighborhood has a problem with the height limits, which is something that is happening in Booker T. Washington. I think that really needs to be taken into consideration because the neighbors have been there for a while. One of the things that I think we need to do about affordable housing is I think the supervisors, and as supervisor, would demand that the housing actually get built. When you just put the money into it, where does that housing go? You just have a giant pool of money that the supervisors divert somewhere else. We need real housing, not 150 square foot or 220 square foot housing that Scott Wiener supported for what he said would be single occupants. That's not what's happening in Manhattan. We have an example. And so I think that we need to make them build the housing. When Lennar was building at the Bayview Hunters Point, they didn't do that. We need to demand that they build the housing. And that is what I think that the supervisors are doing a poor job of. The money is not going to make the housing be there. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much.